Welcome back to the 297th episode of the Daily Flip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be flipping through some of the top stories, including Donald Trump's recasting of Kamala Harris, how it's gone so far, is it actually working, some of the attempts to get her on the back foot, and maybe her response is a little bit better than he would have hoped, and also an interesting article talking about the nationalization of railroads. I want to talk about that because I think it's kind of crazy, but they pose some interesting ideas in the article. And of course, we will end today with our daily delight, a story meant to leave you feeling positive, ready to take on the day. Now, that's enough rambling from me. Let's jump in to our daily debate. So, has Kamala Harris successfully defined herself? Is it something that she got to first compared to Trump? That was the whole argument from anyone who's a political operative as she came out, as the campaign started. They were saying Donald Trump, the Republicans need to define her first. And now they're saying, well, maybe she got away with defining herself before they could. What do you think? Do you think that there's arguments stuck? Do you listen to anything where you're like, yeah, I could actually see that messaging works? Or are you sitting there like, well, no, I actually think that she did a better job? Love to know what everybody thinks. Let's jump into our first article, though, which comes from the Associated Press. Trump is making his 2024 campaign about Harris's race, whether Republicans want him to or not. Which, honestly, that headline reads a very, how should I say, it gives a little bit of an insight into the mind of Republicans. At least that's what the Associated Press thinks they're doing, which is, well, Trump's trying to make this about Harris and some Republicans aren't liking it, basically, is what they're getting at, which I think is kind of weird that they frame it that way because at the end of the day, the election should be about your vision for the country versus the other person's vision for the country. But that doesn't mean that you have to spend all the time casting doubt upon the other person. Sometimes you can just have a strong enough idea of what you want to do, have strong enough beliefs, and also a strong enough plan that really sets you apart from the other person without having to cast them as the villain, so to speak, in this narrative that you build in a campaign. But, but at the end of the day, you are running against somebody else. So I think Associated Press's framing, at least from the very jump, is kind of interesting. But, let them speak for themselves. Let's jump into the article. I'm going to read one of the first paragraphs that kind of sets the stage here. Quote, Democrats expressed new outrage this week at the former president's derisive and false charge that Vice President Kamala Harris, who is of Jamaican and Indian heritage, only recently turned black for political gain. Some Republicans, even from within Trump's own campaign, seem to distance themselves from the comment. And yeah, that one, it kind of feels like a classic 2016 kind of Trump. He's saying the thing that is, I don't want to say on everybody's mind, because honestly, I don't think this is a question that's on many people's minds. I think they don't really care about Kamala Harris's heritage, especially after Joe Biden being the president he was, being the candidate he was. Any Democrat or even any normie American, at least they're sitting there like, okay, at least one party fixed what's going on here. They got rid of the 80-year-old octogenarian that was running for office. I think that's what a lot of people are thinking rather than, wait, hold on, is she of this descent? Is she of that descent? So I think Trump definitely thought he was hitting on something here, and he was going back to the good old days where he was pointing out things where people were actually thinking them and trying to, I don't want to say stir it up because that sounds like he's trying to stir the pot, but trying to really hit on a nerve that is already being thought of or is already being, it's already resonating. That's the best word, resonating within the population. But this is definitely not one of those things versus talking about the media, how they lie. Like, a lot of people felt that way already. A lot of people felt like the media was serving their own ends. They were serving the ends of the politicians, the people who were the quote unquote elites. A lot of people already felt that. So when Donald Trump tapped into that and called them out and was nasty to them because they were nasty to him, and also to some degree because they were asking terrible questions, then the people were like, ah, okay, hey, he's on our side, he's fighting for us. And yeah, I agree with him. I'm happy somebody's finally calling it out. This is not one of those cases. Even if he says it in a way that's still very Trumpian, like I said, not one of the cases where people are like, yeah, I was definitely wondering about that behind the scenes. But I think it does show a very specific strategy on the part of the Trump team, which is they want to make sure that they are focusing in on one specific segment of the population, and that is African Americans. Trump has done very well with the African American vote, or I guess technically African American people, not necessarily of African descent either. Just we could say Black Americans. They have come to Trump over the last 2 or 3 years, a little bit more. Polling shows that this time, especially Black men, are more than willing to actually vote for Donald Trump and maybe hold their nose, honestly, to vote for Donald Trump. And that was with Biden in the race when I saw a lot of the major polling. Things have shifted a little bit with Harris on the ticket. But even then, Trump got probably one of the largest. I mean, he got more than Mitt Romney did. He's had one of the best percentages of the black vote during both of his elections. Or I take that back, in 2016 and 2020, in both of the times that he was running for president. And I think that this is a message that he really does sit there and say, okay, hey, what would tell these people that I understand that maybe she is not one of the people who she says she is. Maybe she is not a person who is of African descent, or I guess in this case, she is not actually black because Jamaican is different, obviously. And, that was an interesting one when that whole argument was going around. It kind of feels like the whole birtherism thing all over again. But the point being that it sounds like he's trying to cast the fact that she's not one of you. And he's trying to really appeal, or at least pay lip service to that sort of commentary that people in that group may actually sit there and think. I'll be honest, once again, I don't really think they care. But there's something, it's a strategy. It is a strategy. It is a active thought process. Because even if you think Donald Trump is just doing everything off the cuff, uh, he is a person who thinks these sort of things out, especially now when he has a whole team behind him. I'm not saying all comments are completely intentional. He goes off script, but they've at least had these conversations behind the scenes. Even when he went off script before, it was a special case. So even during COVID, remember when he would go off script and people would be like, well, this isn't true. He would be like, no, I talked about it with my advisors. There was this research beforehand. We had a whole meeting about it. So even when he's going off script, there's at least conversations that he's referencing. He's not just doing everything off the, literally just pulling out everything from his holster and being like, okay, let's go right now. It's like, no, no, no. There's been a little bit of preparing. He's cleaned it out. He's made sure that everything fires properly. He's done a little bit of research. He's probably looked at some polling groups and said maybe people don't actually think that Kamala Harris represents them as a candidate. But at the end of the day, it doesn't come out that way. And Republicans are distancing themselves because they're seeing it like, oh, okay, this just feels a little bit weird that he's trying to do the whole thing that he did with Barack Obama. And I know weird is also weird. I know I just said it, but maybe it's more important. This is not a politically advantageous line of reasoning or line of inquiry. That's what probably some Republicans are thinking. Then again, I don't think many Republicans are going to leave him over this. So that's why I think the AP's framing is very weird because, hey, guess what? Everybody loves Donald Trump for the most part. Every single person in the Republican Party is sitting there like, no, it's Trump. He says his weird stuff, but they're not going to just leave him and say, he said one too many things about where Kamala Harris is from. He said one too many things about whether or not she's actually black or not, or whether or not she's actually Indian. Oh, how she's trying to use it to her political advantage to be able to camouflage and go in between the two different groups. And she also does it on policy, which that's the reason I think this could technically be an effective message, because if it's framed not as she is not of this group, she does not deserve to call herself blah blah blah, but rather that she, even though she is part of that group, she emphasizes more as she goes into certain group settings. If she's talking to certain groups, she's going to tell stories that emphasize that she had a father who was of certain descent, or a mother of who was of a different descent. These sort of things I think could actually be very, very advantageous to the Trump campaign, because you can also then link it to her policy flipping, how she's gone back and forth from being someone who's really hard on crime to someone who's a little bit more progressive to someone who's now in a general election and is trying to moderate. Then again, that message may be lost on people, because guess what? Donald Trump did it. Joe Biden did it. McCain did it. Romney did it. Obama did it. Everybody does it. Clinton does it. In the primary election, you have to be someone who more aligns with your party. You talk about your bona fides. You talk about all the things that you do, all the policy that you've put out there. And normally, because the demographic that you're appealing to is only your side of the aisle, you're going to be a little bit more out there. And then when you go to the general election, you kind of moderate a little bit. And that's why these debates that we have are so important, even in the primary section, because guess what? Some of Kamala's primary, even her primary debates from 2020, have actually provided clips and questions about what she wants now. Obviously, someone's allowed to change a whole bunch in 4 years. There's no doubt about that. But that's why we need these sort of primary debates every single time, because it reveals where they are. You can either see how they're so blatantly appealing to the Democratic base within the party in these different primary elections, and then how they have to flip when they get back to the general, or you can just see overall, you can actually hold them to account on all of these different things. You can see that, okay, hey, this is the position they were taking there, and how they not necessarily distance themselves and not necessarily flip, but they have to moderate it a little bit, and they say, okay, now that I'm in the general, I still want to do that, but here are the other positions that appeal to the middle. So you can get a more full understanding of the candidate. That's why I think we should have our debates back again, honestly. Make debates great again, guys. Come on, seriously. We need to do it. It's a great system to keep everybody liable and responsible. Because guess what? We got a few different messages from Trump. We got his rallies, but he was not on that primary stage. He did not get pushed to the more right-hand side of the party. He stayed out of it. He didn't want to get cast as one of the other ones fighting over it. And now he has a little bit more leeway going into the general election. Also, it's Donald Trump. I mean, I don't think he's changed his positions that much. He's run twice before. But then again, some things have changed a little bit. TikTok ban, he was for, then he was against. There are a few other immigration things where he's kind of shifted a little bit with some donor money. So it would have been very helpful to have him on record during this process. And I think that the Republican Party is actually glad that, even though they complained about it at the time, the old Republican Party, who said he should be up on that stage, we need to see him against the other candidates, they distanced themselves because of that. And now I think they're falling back into the fold. And that's why I think when they talk about the article, oh, Republicans are backing away. No, they're not. They're coming in full force behind Trump. They're seeing that the Democrats are rallying around Miss Harris, Vice President Harris. And at the end of the day, they're saying, okay, hey, we want to win. So we're just going to fall in behind Trump. We're not going to say that his rhetoric is the best, because it never has been. We're not going to fully endorse every single question that he asks up there on that stage. But we are going to be realistic, and we're going to fall in line. So let's be clear. Let's be 100% clear. If you see any articles where there's phrase within the Republican Party, give it some time. Do some reading. I'm not saying they're wrong, because they very well could be. I just think it's a little bit overzealous of anybody to say, oh, yeah, the Republican Party is 100% falling apart. No. Trump has united the Republican Party. He has brought in a new coalition. And if anybody peels away from that, it will be after he's gone. If he loses this election, or if he wins this election and after 4 years, it will be after he's gone. There's not doing anything about it right now, because it is Donald Trump's party. I mean, we did a whole episode about it the other day. This is Donald Trump's world, and we are just living in it. And it does feel that way sometimes when you're in the political world. All right, so let's jump to our second article that comes from the Washington Examiner. Headline reads, Harris kills Trump's attempt to move new presidential debate. Washington Examiner. So I was talking about how Trump's trying to cast her in a certain light, how these comments are actually probably not going to win over too many people, but they are still a genuine attempt to make sure that the message is set on Harris. And she's obviously now feeling confident enough that she can straight up reject his debate, because she kept saying, hey, debate me, debate me, debate me. Donald, come on, do it. And obviously, she's trying to goad him into going to the debate that already had favorable terms that he had agreed to. Obviously, it's different. Okay, if you agree, let me just say this: you agree to go to a car shop. Okay, where this is you're buying a new car, and you want to go and get a Camaro, and you sign a deal before the actual day that you would buy it. You say, I'm going to buy it on this date, and it's going to be a green Camaro, blah, 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 blah. You do all the details and all the lists, and you're going to have to, negotiate some things based on price and inflation by that time, but you have to get a cashier's check. And then you show up on the day of, and they're saying, well, hey, this is the cashier's check. We're actually going to charge you a little bit more, and it's actually going to be a green Camaro. They're asking Trump, they're saying you have to be liable to that old contract when they can't even provide their half of the deal, which is it was going to be a debate with Joe Biden. So now Harris is out here. She kept saying, do it, do it, do it. Trump said, finally, okay, hey, I'll do it, but we're going to change the terms. It's going to be on Fox News. It's going to be a crowd. And then Kamala's sit there like, hey, I'm confident now. We goaded him into doing it. It looks a little bit weak. Oh, he finally said that he wanted to debate, but he wouldn't do it on the best terms, and they're going to slap him down. Quote, the GOP nominee said on Friday evening he would meet Harris in Pennsylvania next month for a debate hosted by Fox News. Trump also announced that he had negotiated debate terms that would include an audience, which was not a part of the first presidential debate between the Republican leader and President Joe Biden. Quote, I have agreed with Fox News to debate Kamala Harris on Wednesday, September 4th, Trump said in a late night post on social media, end quote. So, this is the next stage of the push. Donald Trump is saying, okay, I feel like we've gotten our feet underneath us. We've gotten a message about her. We know how we want to approach it. I know that I want to push back against this narrative that, oh, I'm scared to fight her. And I don't think Trump is actually that scared to debate her. But I think he actually, if I want to take another step back, because while I think that's an interesting point, we could go down like, oh, they keep saying Trump's scared to debate her. I honestly think that his move to say, hey, it needs to be after the convention, and I want to make sure that I know who I'm debating. I think that's actually very, very, while I don't think it's possible that they will remove her, I do think it is very smart on his behalf because he is a person who has already debated the presidential nominee for the Democrat side, and they have moved the goalposts on him. They have brought in a new person after the terrible, terrible performance of President Joe Biden on that stage. So if you want to make an argument about, hey, well, you should just debate her anyway, no, he's probably sitting there like, no, okay, I already mollywopped this guy so hard. I already knocked him out the park. I already made him leave the race by not even asking super hard questions, but by being composed and appearing different on that stage and not attacking him. And you're telling me that you want me to go into a debate with somebody else and then have the possibility that they change that too? I've spent the last 2 weeks, it completely dulled my momentum after I was going through the RNC, after I had assassination attempt against me and the right was rallying around me. It completely dulled my momentum when Joe Biden dropped out and then Kamala Harris got this new wave of support. Do you want to provide the same thing? Do I want to destroy her in a debate? And let's be clear, I don't know if he would destroy her in a debate. I think that he would probably win the debate, but I think it would be a lot closer. She was on the debate stage. She was okay during the primaries. I would say that she's probably more likely to have a few gaffes since everything's not completely on teleprompter, because we've seen her interviews versus her on teleprompter, and there's a very big difference there. But she also was a lawyer, so if she comes in very well prepared, I think she could have some good lines and zingers. But at the end of the day, it's Trump. He dominates the debate stage. But he's also sitting there saying, well, okay, so if I do dominate this debate stage and I knock her out too, then we have to spend another 2 weeks, a whole bunch of resources redefining who the candidate's going to be. The Democrats are going to feel another groundswell. They're going to be overly happy. I think, honestly, though, if that was a genuine fear, which I don't know, some people are making that comment, and I think those are the people that really sycophantic about Trump, but maybe that is what he's thinking. I honestly think that may actually help him a little bit, which is the idea that, okay, they switched somebody out. Normal people, normal Americans are going to look at that and say, what is the Democratic Party doing? It's not like they're switching it out for the vice president from the president. They would have to find somebody else. It would be someone random. It would be basically, it may be a weird switch up, which I'm pretty sure even at the old proposed times, it would be before. Oh, sorry, it would be after the convention was held. So I don't really think it'd be that easy to get rid of her anyway. But the normie people would look at it if they got rid of her and they would be like, what is the Democratic Party doing? It would be like when McCarthy got ousted from the speaker position in the House, and we had all these different votes behind the scenes. Eventually, Mike Johnson rises. The public opinion for the House of Representatives and Republican Party there was already pretty low, but it was extremely low then because the American people were looking like, what is this fiasco? What are we doing? Why are we run by children? So if they were to remove Kamala Harris, if Donald Trump was to do so well, which is a theory that's going around, that he would do so well and knock her out, and then they would replace her again, and that's why he's hesitant to have this debate because he doesn't want to go into an opponent. He doesn't want to go into a debate with an opponent that could very well not be his opponent in the next few weeks after that. Then I think, like I said, it would be politically advantageous. The middle Americans, Democrats would come behind it no matter what, but middle Americans would sit there and say, hmm, I don't know. I don't know what I'm seeing here. At the end of the day, one party looks more composed, even if it is a Donald Trump. He seems a little bit more on top of his game. He's able to keep the party together. He's able to be a uniter of his party, at least. Maybe he can be a uniter of America. I think there are a few different messaging tracks that you could take on this one. But the idea that she has really won this debate question, okay, hey, I'm going to put it out there. I'm going to put out the offer. I want Donald Trump to accept the terms that he had already agreed to, and he actually sent something and rejected her. I think that the political messaging around this one will be very interesting. I think Kamala Harris and her team are going to keep pushing. Well, hey, he had original terms. He should follow the original terms. And Donald Trump is going to be sitting there like, hey, I made new terms because you're a new person. I don't fill out the same contract. And I think, honestly, both of them have a pretty salient political message. The one that Kamala has is going to run with the Democrats. They're going to keep saying, well, hey, there was these terms. Why didn't you agree, Mr. Trump? He's scared to debate Kamala Harris on the exact same terms he did with Joe Biden, which I wouldn't say scared is the right word, but there is a reason to have different terms for different people. Joe Biden, yeah, I don't think he would be able to handle an audience. I don't think certain things are going to be good for the way that he would want to have the debate. I think, honestly, Kamala, if she has an audience in there that's not just Trump supporters, I think she could also live off of the crowd. I mean, some of her facial expressions, the way that she presents herself on stage, she seems to feed off the energy of the crowd a little bit. So I actually think that's a good change that could be very beneficial for her. And I'm pretty sure her team knows that too. And they're just playing politics at this point. But both sides are going to run with it, which is Trump already offered her something new because she's a new candidate. She's not Joe Biden. It's not Sleepy Joe at the debate. And then at the end of the day, the Kamala team is going to say, well, hey, you agreed to these terms no matter who the president was, basically, even though it didn't seem likely that they were going to swap them out yet. But you agreed to these terms, so you should follow through. And both of them have a pretty salient political message for their side of the aisle, so they're probably not going to move much. But I'll be interested to see how the middle shows up, which the middle will probably be like, why does it matter? Just debate. I don't care what the reasoning is. Find a way to get it done. Because I honestly think most Americans tune into at least the first 20 minutes of the debate because they're genuinely fascinated to understand what's going on in their lives, or at least at the leadership of their country. And if they at least if they get one done, I think it'll be very popular for probably the first 30 minutes. And honestly, both candidates probably I repeat, need to do something exactly like this to reintroduce themselves. Trump, not necessarily as much, but Kamala Harris, she needs the exposure. I think she should be willing, personally, to take on the debate on Donald Trump's terms a little bit, maybe with one or two alterations, so that she can reintroduce herself to the American people, especially cast against Donald Trump, not just as a standalone figure. I think that would be actually very beneficial for her. But at the end of the day, I am not on the Kamala team. I'm not on the Trump team. I do not get paid by either of them. And also, they're probably there like, oh, this person, you're not a political consultant. I'll just say, maybe you should take up the mantle because guess what? Trump went into an unfriendly environment. And when he came out on top, it proved his point even more. If Kamala could do the exact same thing, which I think would be hard, because, like I said, she's better on teleprompter than she is spur of the moment. But she had some okay zingers in some of the debates, though Tulsi Gabbard knocked her down hard. I think it could be beneficial if she comes out on top. And I understand it's a risk, but everything is a risk. And at this point, you are 2 months away. You could play a really safe campaign. I don't know if a really safe campaign is what's going to get you across the line. But hey, could be wrong. So let's jump into our last article. It'll be a really, really quick one. It comes from Common Dreams, and the headline reads, "The Case for Public Ownership of U.S. Railways, Common Dreams." So I was fascinated by this because we have talked about the nationalization of different industries before, especially when talking about other countries. And I've talked about the history of it for, England during World War II, some of the pre-opting of the the co-opting of the industries in, Michigan and the Ford plant and how they actually started building airplanes and all these different things within America. But I always find it interesting when we have more nationalization arguments nowadays because one, unless you are a socialist country or a dictatorship fascist country or a totalitarian country or a weird technocracy like China, a lot of these cases when new countries are popping up or they're coming into the fold, a lot of these cases are sometimes thrown to the wayside. Like, why are we even considering this? We've been down this road before. It's beneficial for a little bit for the overall country, and when I say a little bit, I mean, like, some of the benefits of being able to allocate certain things are better. At the beginning when the money is flowing and it's a new project and you're able to spend hours upon hours and days upon days and everything is new and novel, to some degree it works. Sometimes it fails right away, but sometimes, dictators have been able to make it work. And then in order to actually keep the system as it is, you have to take away from people constantly. You have to spend a whole bunch of extra money with maintaining these sort of things. The quality goes down, and you're also then restricting the workers a certain amount and the people who are in your nation in order to either, tax them, take their money in order to keep your nationalized industry alive, or you lower their standards of living because at the end of the day, you are trying to run an entire industry from the top down board control, essentially. So we've seen that this is not a good thing, but I'm always interested because when these articles come up, I want to see what angle they take. And the angle they take here is actually adjusting the cost structure and making sure that the way that the railroads go about some of their process now, this is from the article. I am not super 100% knowledgeable. I do not know everything about the railroads, but they have a pretty good breakdown of how the cost structure works, how they actually make some of their money, and they want to go into it a little bit deeper here and expose why making it a government run operation will be better. Quote, Norfolk Southern officials and contractors also provide misleading and incomplete information while advocating for unnecessary vent and burn of tank cars carrying vinyl chloride. A vent and burn action is, according to the Federal Railroad Administration, a response of last resort. A public rail system would directly benefit workers, tracksides, communities, small shippers, farmers, passengers, and the environment. So you can see here they're taking the environmental stance right from the very beginning. And then they lambast private ownership. Quote, under the private ownership of the Class 1 railroads, we have seen time and again the callous prioritization of profit over people for the sake of short-term profit. Inspections are cut short, tracks and equipment are not maintained, and the rail workforce is gutted. Features of an industrial system that calculates derailments as part of the cost of doing business. Okay, so we're going to stop here because they say, okay, hey, it's bad that they're cutting cost. So what happens if the government comes in and takes over the railroad system? It goes from a private enterprise to a public utility, essentially. What happens? Are they going to make shipping on that public resource free because everybody's tax dollars, the corporation's tax dollars go to it? So guess what? You don't get charged for it. No, they're probably not going to do that because then they're going to have to take the wages from somewhere else and tax dollars keep going up. So they'll have some sort of system where it's like a wage, it's a cap on how much they would make people pay to ship things. Well, at the end of the day, if prices have to go up for that, certain companies can't pay or they're trying to negotiate deals, guess what? It's not like you're negotiating against a private company, a private actor. You're negotiating against the government. The government has the force of the law. So if they say you're going to pay this amount of money to ship on here, and you're like, nope, not gonna do it, blah blah blah. Needs to happen this way. I'm gonna pay this or I'm out, kind of thing. In a coercive world, you're opening up the possibility that tool, that system, that industry can be used as another branch of the government to force people into certain habits, certain ways of living, and certain practices. Because at the end of the day, if you're told you will use this rail system, otherwise you will be prosecuted, you will at least use the resources that are provided to you, then you're being told by the government they have the monopoly on force, and obviously you can find another way to ship it. There's no doubt about that. I'm not trying to say that, oh, the government's going to come in and say, oh my God, you have to use the rail system. But if they are directly involved in how it's operating, if they control price floors and price ceilings, then you're going to have a standard shipping cost across all of these different things. Every single person is going to be paying or offsetting the amount, unless they run it like a private corporation, where, okay, hey, shipping on this one depends on how much space we have, how long their train ride is. But then at that point, the question is, why isn't it just privately run? If it's better to be publicly run, the question is it going to be free? If it's 100% free, then sure, great. I don't know how you're necessarily funding all of it. I think that the tax dollars are going to go up, which means people are just feeling the cost somewhere else. There's going to be inflation because you're probably going to print more money in order to pay for all of these things. And I know I'm really disjointed on this one. I'm hitting a lot of different points there. But it's just the questions really do arise for me, which is, you say it's going to be better for this, that, and the other. Yes, you say all these things can be better. You don't talk about how we get to the place that it's better. You just talk about what's better when we get there. And that's what's frustrating about me. You don't look at the side effects. You're just looking at the cure. You're not looking at the side effects. At least in their mind, that's the cure. I don't necessarily think it's a cure either, because at the end of the day, these private corporations, if something keeps, another thing happens like Palestine, another thing happens like in Palestine, Ohio, a few more of these things happen, and we see how terrible they are. People are going to stop. They're going to want to stop shipping on them for sure. They're going to try to buy new trucks that can take their chemicals across the country. They're going to find safer ways to do a whole bunch of things, because at the end of the day, public reputation matters, especially in our age where everything goes viral so quickly. Public reputation matters. And that is another expression of the free market, because normally in the old days, you don't have access to all the information. Nowadays, we have nearer to perfect information than we have before. We'll never have perfect information, and that's one of the market failures, but we're getting closer and closer because of social media, because of the ability to share information at such a rapid rate and across such large distances. And that is actually a corrective mechanism within the environment. Sorry, I say the environment within the free market. So I think that we're working towards a system that's always better in that regard, and I don't necessarily love when we talk about the nationalization of different industries. But if you can provide an argument to, or a counter argument to all my incoherent thoughts, because yes, they were a little bit incoherent and they were kind of all over the place there, maybe I can more concisely explain it to you if you have a very specific line of questioning. All right. So with that, let's jump in to our daily delight. We talked about some serious stuff. Now we're going to talk about something cute, which comes from this one from Bored Panda. The headline reads, "Two French bulldogs steal people's hearts on the internet with their cozy burrito look." And yes, these guys are dressed up in like the TY tags and a cute little blanket. They definitely look like they are little burrito boys. They are, I believe they're brothers. They look very similar. They would be absolutely adorable to just have in bed. Just give them a little pat. They probably fall asleep as a little burrito. If you want to see the photos or videos from this article, or you want to read any of today's articles, there is the links in the description below that like and subscribe button. Also down there, you can find the link to the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Casts, Google Podcast is dead, Podvine, as well as the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip. So with all that said, there is only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.